Welcome back to my Raast History YouTube channel. Today this video will be interesting because I tell you something that you never listened before. I talk about World War I 1914. Today I discuss about Part 1 of World War I. Part 1. Political and National Aims and Strategies. National Aims and Objectives of the Major European Powers. 1. Germany. Germany was the youngest country, which had recently achieved unification. Kaiser William II succeeded to the German throne in 1889. Born with a deformed arm, his personal schizophrenia came to play its part in his policies. The sagacity and wisdom of Bismarck was lost by Germany in 1890, when the new emperor dismissed him. The national aims of Germany could be summarized as A. To preserve the status quo. B. To avoid a two-front war. C. To become the dominant power in Europe. D. To support Austria, being its main ally. E. To ensure France does not regain Alsace and Lorraine. 2. The Great Britain. Initial British aims in continental matters were twofold. 1. The maintenance of the European equilibrium. 2. Only to intervene in Europe once the equilibrium was physically threatened. Otherwise, to maintain a policy of splendid isolation. A. The British policy was reviewed towards the end of the century and splendid isolation came to an end with the signing of the Entente Cordiale with France in 1904 and, subsequently, with Russia in 1907, bringing about the formation of the Triple Entente. The Great Britain's main national strategy still remained the maintenance of balance of power in Europe, but its focus had changed from France to Germany. Britain's national aims, thus, became 1. Neutralizing Germany as the major rising power, threatening the European equilibrium. 2. Ensuring that German naval programs should not threaten British naval supremacy. 3. Guarantee the neutrality of Belgium, Holland and the Netherlands, the Low Countries, to guard against a possible cross-channel invasion. 4. Eliminating Germany as a potential economic competitor. 5. Ensuring that Russia should not capture the Bosphorus Straits. 3. France. France, after the Napoleonic Wars, stood isolated in Europe. The Holy Alliance and the Quadruple Alliance had been put into effect to guard against French militarism and keep a check on the radical ideas of the French Revolution. French relations with Germany remained strained since the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. Problems were magnified by the scope of the Prussian victory in the war and the peace that concluded it. The German annexation of Alsace-Lorraine produced a reconcilable French antagonism, which eliminated any German diplomatic option towards France. The French grand and national strategies were directed towards the following aims. A. End its isolation in Europe. B. Regain the grandeur of the Napoleonic and Bourbon era. C. Become the dominant power in Europe. D. Regain the vanity lost as a result of the Franco-Prussian War. E. Ensure that Germany be threatened with a two-front war. F. Not allow Germany to gain dominance of Europe. G. Regain the lost territories of Alsace, Lorraine. H. Become leading colonial power like Great Britain. 4. Russia. Russia during most part of the 19th century remained occupied in its eastward expansion or bids to dominate the Bosphorus Straits by igniting pan-slavism. Tsar Nicholas II ascended to the Russian throne in 1894. He led Russia into a disastrous war with Japan, and, then, permitted his country to become a captive to an alliance system, which made war with Germany virtually inevitable. At the outbreak of the Great War, Russian national aims were as under A. Tsar Alexander II had stated that what we would gain from a war in Europe would be that Germany as such should disappear, as it would break up into a number of small weaker states, the way it used to be. B. Russia portrayed itself as the champion of pan-Slavism, and wanted the Slavic populations to gain independence from the Turks and the Austrians. C. To acquire Constantinople from the Turks and, hence, gain access to the Mediterranean for its Black Sea flat eats and a short route for commerce. D. To satisfy its vanity and prestige lost as a result of the Russo-Japanese War of 1904–1905. E. Austria backed by Germany annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina in 1908. Russia interpreted it as a German maneuver to destroy its position amongst the Slavs. Hence, it endeavored to regain that status by humiliating Germany at some stage. 5. Austria-Hungary. Austria was a polyglot empire, grouping together the multiple nationalities of the Danube basin. There were numerous FI-SSI Paris forces within the empire, especially in the Slavic regions. Known as a weak European country, Austria in the second half of the 19th century had little influence over continental European affairs. It was neither a competitor in trade, colonies, commerce or power. Its main interest lay in the preservation of its empire. National and grand strategies. 6. Germany. A. National aims, objectives. German national aims were well conceived, as they were basically a continuation of the aims set by Bismarck. However, Kaiser William II differed from Bismarck in that Bismarck wanted to consolidate the gains of German unification, whilst maintaining a relatively low profile. Kaiser's volatile personality caused him to adopt a policy of aggrandizement and power projection. This German aspiration led to adoption of such policies and strategies, which brought Germany to the brink of war. B. Actualization of aims, objectives. The tragedy for Germany lays not in its incorrect national aims but in the policies designed to achieve those aims and the flat odd manner of its implementation. Most of the policies and strategies lacked statesmanship and were not in accord with the aims. As a result, instead of actualizing the aims, they took Germany far from them. C. The Triple Alliance. To Germany the most important policy was the preservation of the status quo and to consolidate the gains of Moltke and Bismarck, brought about through unification. Bismarck's policy was to stabilize the peace that Germany had won and to ensure it, so he set out to win the friendship of Russia. In order to isolate France, in 1879, he concluded with Austria a defense treaty known as the Dual Alliance, which 2 years later was joined in by Italy. Thus, the Triple Alliance was germinated. For nearly 20 years that Bismarck led Germany, he practiced the realpolitik. He preached with such moderation and subtlety that the balance of power never broke down. D. German demand for recognition of its power. William II succeeded to the German throne in 1889. He gave the impression of being immature and erratic. Born with a deformed arm, his personality suffered from different schisms. In 1890, he dismissed Bismarck, refusing to govern in the shadow of such a towering figure. As against Bismarck's policy of subtlety and moderation, what the Kaiser wanted most was international recognition of Germany's importance and above all its power. He failed to understand that the more Germany magnified its own strength, the more it would encourage the competing coalitions to build up arms, thereby disturbing the system of European equilibrium. E. Two-front war threat. Germany, having developed by the end of 19th century as the most powerful country of continental Europe, its national policy and strategy should have been directed towards the prevention of hostile alliances, which were the only means by which Germany could be defeated. It was Kaiser William's lack of understanding and statesmanship that allowed the Franco-Russian alliance to come about. By 1894, this diplomatic alliance changed into a military alliance, and Germany's main strategic aim of prevention of a two-front war was nullified. F. Lack of comprehension of the real requirements of own security. The Franco-Russian alliance should have seriously cautioned Germany and its strategies. Thereafter, its efforts should have been directed towards ensuring that this alliance would not further be strengthened by Britain being co-opted into it. Britain in 1890s was still willing for rapprochement with Germany. These attempts failed because of German leadership's persistent lack of comprehension of traditional British policy as well as the real requirements of own security. Kaiser wanted England to abandon its non-committal policy and provide continental-type guarantees on treaties. What made this German pressure for formal guarantees so self-reflecting was that Germany did not really need it, because it was strong enough to defeat any potential continental adversary or a combination of them, so long as Britain did not take their side. G. Strategies inconsistent with aims. Instead of working towards the attainment of the aforesaid aim, German national strategy and policies worked to the contrary, as is evident from the following. 1. In 1890, the German parliament passed a bill to increase her naval strength. This developmental strategy alarmed Britain, as the cornerstone of British policy had been to maintain its naval supremacy. 2. In 1895, when the Jameson raid into the Transvaal failed, causing a great deal of embarrassment to the British government, Kaiser sent a telegram to Transvaal's President Kruger, congratulating him on repelling the attack. This was a direct slap on the Great Britain's face. 3. As late as 1912, there was still a chance of settling Anglo-German differences. Lord Haldane, Rst Lord of the Admiralty, visited Berlin to discuss relaxation of tension, by offering a naval accord and a pledge that if either of the countries was entangled in a war, in which it could not be said to be the aggressor, the other would at least observe benevolent neutrality. D. Independence of the Low Countries. For the past 100 years, the British national strategy for guaranteeing the independence of the Belgium, Holland and Netherlands remained firm. The British aims in this regard were twofold. Britain would not allow any power to use these countries as a launching pad for a cross-channel invasion, while, simultaneously, it required these countries as a bridgehead into continental Europe. Their independence had, thus, become a cornerstone of the British policy, a fact which the German leadership failed to discern. E. Overtures towards Germany. During the 1890s, the Great Britain felt beleaguered by endless clashes with Russia in Afghanistan and northern China, and with France in Egypt and Morocco. These colonial frustrations directed British policy towards improving relations with Germany. German policy makers, convinced that both Russia and Britain needed Germany, thought they could drive a hard bargain with both. Germans failed to realize that as a result of this strategy they might be pushing Russia and Britain closer to each other. F. Entente cordiale with France. German short-sightedness and insensitivity, especially in rejecting Britain's offer for a diplomatic entente, the Krugers' telegram and the naval bill accelerated the trend of alienation of Germany. In 1900, Britain carried out a review of its aims and strategies, having concluded that Germany had become the main threat to the continental balance of power. Started rapprochement towards France. The result was the signing of the Entente cordiale with France in 1904, precisely this sort of arrangement for informal cooperation, which Germany had constantly rejected. This treaty of friendship grew into a secret military alliance. G. Formation of the Triple Entente. Germany used the Morocco crisis of 1905 to demonstrate that British support for France, as a result of Entente cordiale, was either illusory or ineffective. Contrary to German expectations, Britain backed France to the hilt. Instead of weakening the Entente cordiale, it led to the Anglo-Russian Entente of 1907. With the emergence of the Anglo-France-Russian Entente, the German encirclement was complete. 8. France. A. Collapse of the Metternich system. France, since the Congress of Vienna of 1814, was an isolated country. Metternich had taken all the preventive measures to ensure that France did not assert its power again over Europe. The Metternich system collapsed as a result of the Crimean War of 1854. This gave France freedom to assert itself. Resultantly, 2 decades of conflict followed, in which 4 limited wars were fought and France virtually participated in all 3 wars and encouraged the other. These conflicts, however, failed to fulfill France's aims. And quite contrarily, as a result of these wars, France lost its position of pre-eminence to Germany. B. French inability to discern their security requirements. 1. France was uncomfortable with the Vienna settlement of 1814, as it was designed to contain France. It was also against the German Federation, because that too was designed with the same motive. Hence, in 1866, France viewed the Austro-Prussian War, which brought the German Confederation to an end, as a strategic gain. Napoleon Bonaparte III wrote to the Austrian Emperor, "I must confess that it was not without certain satisfaction that we have witnessed the dissolution of the German Confederation, organized mainly against France. 2. What France failed to realize was that the alternative to the German Confederation was not Richelieu's fragmented Germany, but a strong unified Germany. By attacking the Vienna settlement, Napoleon was converting a defensive obstacle into a potential offensive threat to France's security. C. Entente cordiale with Russia. Having committed the mistake of creating a Frankenstein in its midst and having lost its supremacy to Germany, as a result of the Franco-Prussian War, France at last realized the potential danger. When Kaiser William II of Germany rejected the Tsar's offer for renewal of the Reinsurance Treaty, France was quick to capitalize on this German blunder and, in 1891, signed an Entente cordiale with Russia, which by 1894 was converted into a military alliance against Germany and Austria. France was, thus, able to attain its two main national aims of ending its isolation and threatening Germany with a two-front war. D. Entente cordiale with Britain. Having achieved its initial aim, French strategy was directed towards strengthening of the Entente by inducing Britain into the alliance. The opportunity was presented when Germany annoyed Britain through the Kruger's telegram in 1896 and the passing of the German naval bill. France, through vigorous diplomacy, was able to induce Britain into signing an Entente cordiale in 1904. Thereafter, it instigated Britain to sign a similar Entente with Russia, bringing about the formation of the Triple Entente by 1907. E. Reluctance to join a Balkan war. France had very little interest in the Balkans. Since the origin of World War I was in the Balkans, France closely watched the events after June 28, but remained non-committal towards the war. France remained quiescent throughout the crises, as it had no real reason to go to war. 9. Russia. A. Russian expansionism. Russian expansion in the East continued throughout the 19th century. To the Europeans, Russia was an elemental force, a mysterious expansionist's presence to be feared and contained either by cooperation or confrontation. Metternich tried the route of cooperation and announced the Treaty of San Stefano, which would emasculate Turkey and create a big Bulgaria dominated by Russia. Both the Great Britain and Austria declared the treaty unacceptable. B. Congress of Berlin. As war seemed inevitable, Bismarck reluctantly organized a Congress in Berlin in 1878, in which the Bulgarian crisis was amicably settled. After the Congress of Berlin, Russia blamed its failure to achieve all its aims not on Disraeli, who had organized the opposing coalition, but on Bismarck, who had managed the Congress to avoid a European war. This annoyance led to disintegration of the Three Emperors League. C. Reinsurance Treaty. Bismarck's last major initiative was the Reinsurance Treaty between Germany and Russia. Germany and Russia promised each other to stay neutral in a war with a third country, unless Germany attacked France, or Russia attacked Austria. However, William II refused to renew the treaty in 1891. This increased Russian anxieties in relation to German designs and, hence, paved the way for Franco-Russian Entente of 1891. D. Reorientation of interests towards Europe. Towards the last decade of the 19th century, Russian expansionism in the East had reached its maximum limits. In Afghanistan, it had started clashing with British interests in India. In China, it clashed with Britain, Japan, and led to the Russo-Japanese War of 1904–05, in which Russia was convincingly defeated. So Russian expansionist interests turned towards Europe. Russia began to eye on the collapsing Turkish Empire for spoils. Austria was not keen to see Russia expand in Eastern Europe. The resultant clash of interests with Austria led indirectly to confrontation with Germany. Tsar Nicholas II's advisors had promised him that from the shores of the Pasiphae Sea to the heights of the Himalayas, Russia would dominate not only the affairs of Asia but Europe as well. E. The quest for Constantinople. Russia's long-cherished dream was the capture of Constantinople. Russian national policy and strategy for the entire century remained dominated by the desire to control the Straits. Peter Duranovo, a Russian internal minister, analyzed this aim and wrote, "Even if Russia realized its centuries-old goal of conquering the Dardanelles, it would not give us an entry to the open sea, since on the other side there lies a sea consisting almost wholly Of territorial waters, a sea dotted with numerous islands, where the British Navy would have no trouble enclosing to us every inlet and outlet irrespective of the straits. Military developmental strategies. 10. Military developments of the later part of the 19th century and their impacts were as under. A. The period of colonial expansion coincided with three major developments in weapon power: the general adoption of the small-bore magazine rifle E-Fi-Ring, smokeless powder, the perfection of the machine gun, and the introduction of quick-fi-ring artillery. B. The crucial year in the development of the machine gun was 1884, when Hiram S. Maxim patented a one-barrel gun, which loaded and fired itself by the force of recoil. The original model weighed 40 pounds, it was water-cooled and belt-fed, and 2,000 rounds could be fired from it in 3 minutes. It was inducted by the British Army in 1889 and it revolutionized infantry tactics circa. In 1891, quick-firing artillery was introduced in Germany. This innovation brought immense fiery support for the infantry and cavalry. D. In 1885, Gottlieb Daimler devised the internal combustion engine, using petrol as fuel. By the end of the century, the IC engine (ICE) had become common, but highways did not exist to allow actualization of the benefits of motor transport. E. The greatest triumph of IC engine was seen on the 17th of December 1908 at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, where Oliver Wright fled EU for 12 seconds. The aeroplane had nominal effects on the First World War, but even Douhet could visualize the effects this machine was to have on future warfare. Follow and subscribe my channel. Stay away with me for part 2. Thanks for watching.